So I finally finished JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 and Part 2, or Seasons 1 and Seasons 2. It has been a very bizarre adventure. That's the only word I could describe about watching these first 26 episodes of JoJo. And the big question I have left in my head is, why did I not watch this sooner? Why did I not watch such a badass series sooner? I'm so glad there's more content for me to watch after I finish this Part 1 and Part 2, because Stardust Crusaders is currently airing. I've enjoyed the run of Part 1 and Part 2. I've enjoyed it. I like both different arcs. I like the characters. I like the villains. This has been a very fun series. From start to finish, I've had a lot of enjoyment with it, and I want to dive deeper into the course of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, the ending of this final episode, episode 26 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2, the conclusion of Part 2, we see Dio's chest. Now, on episode 9, we get to see, Jonathan, and we get to see Dio, and they're about to die, and the boat's about to explode, and they're supposedly dead. Well, you found out they supposedly died in that moment. Well, at the end of Part 2, the final episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, we see a chest dragged out of the water, the same chest that Dio was going to stay in with Jonathan's body, and so that hints that most likely Dio is alive. That right there is the big mindfuck, because Dio, I liked him as a villain. I really liked Dio as a villain. I mean, he was more of a cocky prick. Out of all the villains we've had in the course of this series, Cars, AC/DC-sama, Wamu, and then Dio, I've enjoyed Dio as the evil guy. Wamu, man, he definitely is probably one of my favorites. So Wamu was crazy, because just the way he was as a character was just so unique. It's something you don't see a lot, honestly. I mean, there's just something about Wamu's character. Even though he wasn't the strongest out of AC/DC-sama or even Cars, Wamu was a good character, and I loved the way he fought and the way he had honor as a gladiator or a warrior's code. Now, this entire series, I recommend it. If I'm not going to spoil just yet, I recommend this series for anyone that wants an interesting shonen. JoJo is on an entirely different level of any anime I've seen. JoJo is JoJo. I have nothing to compare this series with. Yes, it has a lot of the shonen cliches we see in a lot of different manga and anime, but JoJo does it properly. As I've already stated in my episode 9 and episode 1 thing, how I don't understand how JoJo does it so right, I still don't understand, but it is so awesome, and all the characters, you'll just grow to like them. Now, here's the big thing, okay? I love how this series developed Joseph Joestar. He was a good character. I liked him a lot more than Jonathan. Jonathan and Joseph are two unique main characters. And if you don't know about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, pretty much it focuses on, like, the heritage or the family of the Joestar family. That's exactly the main characters of this series. I mean, at first when I got into JoJo, I was wondering how many freaking seasons this had, and at the same time, why did it have so many seasons? So I found out that each part has an individual different Joestar or JoJo, and they take up the mantle of that story, and I like that. It's very unique to an anime, or a shonen at that, because something JoJo's Bizarre Adventure does I've never seen an actual shonen do, it kills off characters constantly for the course of the entire series. I mean, there'll be some characters you grow really attached to, and then all of a sudden they get cut in half, split open, died, frozen to bits, snapped in half by Dio, just different things that happen and you do not expect. I mean, there's so many deaths in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's absolutely shocking and stunning, because this series looks wacky and comical at the first look at. I mean, if you look at the animation, you look at how the characters act, you would not think this series is a dark series, but actually it is. And that is something I like. JoJo knows how to shift between the comedy elements, to the badass action moments, to the serious moments, and then to the dark, depressing moments. That's something JoJo does well, and I compliment the writer of this series for doing that. That is something I really appreciate. The big thing here is that usually in a shonen, the main villain always has to lose, okay? But with this, we see that, the main characters, they do lose a lot in this run of this series. Just from watching Part 1 and Part 2, a lot of characters have died up to the point of episode 26 that I truly cared about. And that, it leaves you those feelings of like, oh my god, I'm upset that those characters I really enjoyed and appreciated died, but it leaves you with like, man, this writer knows how to make a story that actually progresses. For instance, you actually see phenomenal progression in the series, like the time is moving onward. Usually when we see a shonen or something, let's say One Piece or Naruto, they will have to have time skips to represent, time moving forward. But with JoJo, they mainly have like generation to next generation going off, and I like that. I like that style of time skips, and it's something I've never seen before. It kind of reminds me of a game I used to play on my Xbox called Record of Agristor. That was a good game, and it spanned 5 generations, and probably one of my favorite RPGs, anime RPGs I've ever played, because it kind of reminds me similar aspects to JoJo, because it would go from one generation to the next, and it would shift the main characters, and that's what JoJo does, and I feel like that's why I have grown so attached to this series already, just from seeing those unique elements in this. Now, all the characters from each individual arc are freaking amazing, like Speedwagon. Okay, so there's a lot of 80s and 90s bands in this freaking series, like AC/DC Sama. Cars? I mean, there's so much unique things in this series. I laugh my ass off, because when I first saw AC/DC Sama introduced, I'm like, I was absolutely flabbergasted of seeing a character like that introduced into this series. And then Wamu, just, oh my god, he's such a fucking badass. I mean, there's something that JoJo does correctly, too. It knows how to build up a villain. I mean, when you first see Dio as a villain, he seems unstoppable. He seems like a fucking monster in the first 9 episodes. I mean, Dio is just a monster. I mean, like, who can fight such a monster? And then you see Santama introduced, I think around episode 11 or 12, and his entire design of how he just kicks ass, and you just see him walk into someone, not even fighting like Dio would, and he rips someone in half. You're like, holy fucking shit! Holy shit, the level of power is insane. I mean, you can clearly see the power standing and difference between the power levels of the characters, and I like that, and it feels legit. Now, I don't know how exactly they can go from the point of the ending of this series of part 2. I know there's a total of like 8 parts of JoJo, so I'm guessing there's going to be like 8 different main characters to each different part. But I mean, how can they keep this story going with the stone mask? That's the biggest question I have, because the stone mask, okay, it makes vampires. If you don't know already and you're still watching this, you're clueless about JoJo, it makes vampires. So the big question is, how can they keep this element, this like certain element in this series, making vampires unique? Because I mean, with season 2, part 2, it was introduced that the stone mask was made by Cars. And Cars made this mask to be able to walk underneath the sun and become an omnipotent god that could rule over all creation. And the thing is, okay, I mean, he made this red stone that could fit inside the stone mask to be able to become that. But what can become more powerful than that? Because, I mean, seriously, that was like almost max power that a character should get at in this series. And so how are they going to have the progression with the power standpoints from that point onward? Because, I mean, how can they keep this stone mask relevant to the series when the maximum potential out of it was already introduced in part 2? That's the biggest question I have right now. I mean, I can already see that most likely Dio is going to be the main villain, central villain of part 3, since we saw his chest and most likely he's alive. Or it could be Jonathan still alive. I have no fucking clue, but they both died. I saw them both die, but still, I have a good feeling Dio is going to come back, and I don't necessarily say that Dio might be a villain. I mean, at the end of episode 9, we see Dio really respect his brother, or his stepbrother, Jonathan, and so maybe Dio has made a change of heart, and he might be a good vampire. I mean, that would be definitely unique. That would definitely spice up the part 3 equivalent to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure if Dio turned out to be a nice guy and watched over the generations of different JoJo's. That would be pretty fucking badass if that was to happen. But there's many things and questions I'm curious about for the next part 3, which I will watch very soon. I just wanted to make my collab thoughts on part 1 and part 2. Now, animation-wise, this was made in 2011, if I'm correct. This is a remake to the original JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and the animation is phenomenal. It looks so badass. It holds up better than some of the anime from the last season. That's how great the animation of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is. I love it. And when the use of CGI in the series has to be the best work of CGI I've ever seen in an anime. Ever. And then that opening song, the first opening song, like, just, oh my god, dude, who could not like that? It's so fucking awesome. And so, I love this series. There's many elements I could talk about. For instance, Stroheim, oh my god. I'm so pissed. I really am about that. You probably know if you've already watched part 2. Stroheim is the most badass fucking Terminator cyborg German I have ever seen in a fucking anime. This dude has a fucking theme song, like a German theme song choir background that just sounds so fucking amazing. I mean, oh my god, you know he's about to kick some ass when you hear that song rev up. You just see, like, UVA lights just striking at cars, AC/DC, and different people like that. He's a monster. I mean, he is a human being that doesn't have, like, Holland like JoJo, but he's able to fight on par with these freaking vampires. I'm like, what the fuck? It is so crazy. It really is, because, I mean, seeing Stroheim just have, like, robotic hands, robotic eye, that choir music, and you just see him bossing and all that. It's insane. It really is. And like how he pops out of nowhere, like he was the main key person that saved Joseph Joestar at the end of part 2. I mean, he stabs cars in the fucking throat with a metal hand. He launches probably kilometers away and freaking impels him to a plane. That is freaking... Oh, do I even need to go even further why that is badass, okay? The man gets his own theme song, that's enough, okay? But when you have a Terminator German kicking fucking ass against, like, the strongest villain you have seen, and he doesn't have no power like you would see JoJo have, it's ridiculous. It really is. And so, it's sad to see that Stroheim died. I was really upset. Out of all the deaths I was sad about in the course of the series, I'm not gonna lie, I was more sad to the fact that Stroheim died. Or Caesar. Caesar was a sad death, too. I like Caesar. Actually, let's get into Caesar. I need to talk about him a lot more. What made part 2 of JoJo so unique and why I like it better than the first part is because of Caesar, and you get to see Joseph's, like, I guess, rivalry between each other, and at the same time you get to see, like, they were kind of like brothers. And I like that. I really do. And the way the writer of this series decided to kill off Caesar on episode 20 was fitting, emotional, sad. I was about to do a review on episode 20 when I saw that death scene, but I was like, no, I'm going to finish this series and I'll do my final thoughts. The death of freaking Caesar, I did not see coming. I mean, I should have expected as much since I've seen so many characters already die, but it just came out of nowhere, pretty much. Like, you're like, oh my god, I love this character, and all of a sudden he dies fighting Wamu, and you're like, what the fuck, he just dies. And it just makes you have that rage towards Wamu, and you want to see Wamu die, but in the middle of the fight, you have to commend Wamu, because he fought like a true warrior, and he let Caesar do his final act and attack, and also take some of the piercing off of Wamu to be able to free Joseph Joestar from the poison that's wrapped around his heart and neck, and I like that. I like that a lot, and I wish a lot of anime would use these elements. I mean, if a lot of anime probably used these elements, it wouldn't be as good, because JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like I have already said a couple times in this review, knows how to mix in these cliches and make it work and even be better than the original cliches, and that is something that makes JoJo's Bizarre Adventure bizarre and badass. I love it. I love this series, and it definitely is something that is unique, and it's the most unique thing I've ever seen. I'm glad I've started this adventure, and I definitely will be catching up to Stardust Crusaders very soon. Everybody, tell me your thoughts on part 1 or part 2 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What was your favorite part? What was your favorite arc? What was your favorite main JoJo? Let me know how you feel about Caesar's death. What do you feel about Dio? What do you feel about my theory about Dio most likely being alive? And do you feel like this shonen anime kills off characters like they're going out of style? Please let me know in the comments below. I love all of you so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.